include Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, working to shorten the gap between cancer research and cancer care. Learn more about Dana-Farber's Momentum of Discovery at danafarber.org/everywhere.
And welcome, everybody, to Studio 2. I'm Avi Wolfman-Arendt.
And I'm Cherry Gregg. Avi, today we're talking technology. And you know this about me. I have not one, but two cell phones, okay? I also
Two
have
smartphones.
two
Let's be
smartphones,
specific.
okay? I have an iPad. I have a couple of laptops. We got smart speakers all throughout the house.
Rewind for a second. Why the two phones?
Well, reporter hack that I've had for years. Work people call me on one, and long time I've had the same phone number from when my grandmother. It's a long story.
Yeah, but you're keeping the stream separate.
Keep the stream
I
separate.
feel that.
Yeah. But technology is everywhere. AI is creeping in now, and so today we're going to talk about the resistance. Right? There's a growing resistance. A number of people, including young people, can you believe it? They are pushing back. They are ditching their smartphones, and they're embracing a simpler, less connected lifestyle, and some are even calling themselves Luddites. Yeah, we'll talk about that term.
Sure,
you probably know what that is. And so our question of the
I felt like
day.
you wanted a response on that, but I
You
didn't
just
have
looked at
anything
me.
to say.
You just looked at me like,
Yep, Luddites, yep.
Yep. And so the question of today is, how long could you live without your smartphone? A day, a week, forever? Are you worried about your dependence on technology? We want you to call in. Let us know. Call 888-477-9499. You can also email studio2@whyy.org. Appreciate the folks who are commenting online because this is a big issue. I mean, I use my phone a lot. I probably need to cut back.
You know what really freaked me out? I realized recently, so my phone's always on vibrate. It never rings. So I get vibrations for text messages and for push notifications from apps. And I realized, even though it's very subtle, that I could tell the difference between the two.
Oh, you got that good.
Yeah. And it's like, you realize this thing is like hardwired into your nervous system. Like it's almost like you're one with the phone. And I'm not even like a big, I have a old smartphone that actually has become non-functional in certain ways because I can't upgrade certain apps. So like this is coming from someone who I think on the spectrum of technology adoption is toward the Luddite end, but I'm still feel like I'm one with my phone.
Yeah.
And it's weird.
Yeah. So
it's sci-fi like.
Yeah. So tell us, call in. We want to hear from you. Could you let your phone go? Could you live without it? Why or why not? Share a story with us, 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. And to all our tater tots on
Spud
the
Buds.
YouTube channel,
I like Spud Buds.
you can leave your comment or question in the live chat.
And first, as we always do, Cherry, trio
Yes.
of local news stories. We're going to start at the University of Pennsylvania today, which is facing legal action and a federal investigation related to former swimmer Leah Thomas. If you don't recall, Thomas is a transgender swimmer who initially competed on the Penn men's team and later on the women's team, where she was among the best swimmers in the country back in 2022. The news that broke today, this is according to Fox News, it's an exclusive from Fox News. The Department of Education under Donald Trump will investigate Penn for potential violations of Title IX after it allowed Thomas to compete on the women's team back in 2022. Earlier this same week, 3 former Penn swimmers filed a federal lawsuit against Penn and the Ivy League for allowing Thomas to compete. They're also claiming Title IX violations there. All 3 of those swimmers were former teammates of Thomas in 2021-22, and they say her presence denied them competitive opportunities. We thought this story was in the past. It's now been brought back into the spotlight because, again, the lawsuit, and now, from what Fox News is reporting, a federal probe into Penn itself.
Yeah, and I recall that Leah Thomas case. It was especially controversial because she had previously been on the men's team earlier in her athletic career at Penn. And at the time, I remember it being reported that some of the women on the team have felt pressured. They could not speak out. And so I'm not surprised that there is this lawsuit. Now, I should mention that the NCAA president has responded to President Trump's executive order on this, saying that now that there's a clear national standard, that the NCAA Board of Governors would review it and take steps to align the organization's policy in the coming days. So there could be some change. And by the way, yesterday was...
So what's the point? It makes you wonder, what's the point of retroactively litigating what the Leah Thomas situation if now this is the standard moving forward? I'm saying for the administration and for the swimmers. I mean, obviously, politically, to use it as a wedge issue, which
it
I
is
have
a
for
wedge
a long
issue.
time, even though there's very, very few of these athletes across NCAA. But other than that, I'm not even quite sure it's to have a chilling effect on Penn if they ever. But they couldn't even do this moving forward. It would seem like.
Yeah, because the standard has changed.
Right. I don't know. Anyways, story number 2.
Story number 2, the Philadelphia DA is under fire by some criminal justice advocates after prosecutors sought leniency for a prominent attorney who is accused of shooting a man outside of a Center City cigar bar. Prosecutors have asked the judge to allow this accused attorney to be put in a diversionary program that would allow him to get his record expunged if he does 30 hours of community service, forfeit his gun, and donate $25,000 to an anti-violence group. Now, if you're on our YouTube channel, you probably saw the photo there. The lawyer in question is Leonard Hill, and you've probably seen his smiling face on billboards all along I-95 promoting his personal injury law firm. And the reason why this is somewhat controversial is because diversion is highly unusual, especially for someone charged with aggravated assault, as is in this case. He's also been charged with reckless endangerment and other crimes. In fact, only 1.5% of cases get that luxury. And so what's really interesting here is that the chief of the Public Defender Association of Philadelphia, the largest public defense group in the state, is calling out the DA. They said this offer for a diversion program is just another example how the criminal justice system has two separate outcomes for the haves and for the have-nots. And so they said they're going to use this as an example for their indigent clients, and that they want the same opportunities for their clients to get diversionary programs as more prominent attorneys who are well connected.
So what's the argument from the DA's office from Hill's End? Because it seemed like they were making the claim that he was acting as a good Samaritan here.
That's what they said.
In this situation. And so, yes, he did break the law, but it was with sort of a good intent.
Yeah, but that's what they said. And I mean, this was a situation where I think someone was being accosted in a cigar bar,
right,
and that spilled outside, and he ended up using his firearm. But what was interesting is
he was trying to defend someone who was being attacked. Yeah.
But what was an interesting fact that kind of came out, and this is according to authorities, is that he didn't turn himself in per se. They had to use surveillance video to identify him. So they're saying that,
wasn't exactly forthright.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but they're saying that they want this type of consideration for all defendants.
Well, if you're
not
a defender,
just wealthy, connected defendants.
Yeah, if you're a defender, maybe it's a good thing they set the precedent here and you get to point to it over and over again. Mm-hmm. So sort of let Leonard Hill pave the way, I guess.
For others to get diversion for a shooting, which is rare.
So third story, shooting in another way, film shooting.
Yeah.
If you live out in the main line, you might have seen the historic Anthony Wayne Theater. It's in Wayne. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful old theater. You can see it there on our YouTube channel. Art Deco style theater built in 1928. Eventually fell on tough times, as many of these theaters do, and it closed for good during the pandemic. But according to an outlet called Savvy Main Line, a nonprofit has formed to revive the theater, and they have the help of a famous friend. They have a lease agreement in place for the theater. They want to gut and restore the interior, revive it as a theater, a community meeting space. And one of the nonprofit's board members is Ishana Night Shyamalan, the daughter of probably the most famous film director in our area, M. Night Shyamalan. And they're modeling this idea of redoing the theater out there on the main line off what they did for the Bryn Mawr Film Institute, which I think has been doing its thing for like 20 years now. But it's a similar idea. They revived this old theater and have turned it into a community space, and they do all sorts of cool stuff there. So we'll see if this works, but it's like a buzzy little project. And I saw we were captivated by the pictures, I think, of the Anthony Wayne Theater, which I've never been to, but I was like, I'm not even a movie guy. Like I would see a movie there. It seems cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I just thought back to when we were at the Newtown Theater for our for our holiday movie spectacular extravaganza. They have
Ganza.
I gotta throw that in there. And they have membership, kind of like, and they have had all sorts of renovations. And if you recall, when we did our event there, we were just one of several events that day. And so they are thriving. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Can I tell you why? Mm-hmm. Because so these little independent old movie theaters, they lost out, in the back half of the 20th century because of the big movie chains and like the air conditioned comfy theaters. But I feel like today, like when you go to a movie in the theater, like you can always just watch that same thing on your laptop. So what are you really going for? You're going for experience, you're going for a community, and I feel like that throwback theater vibe, like it would make sense to me if I'm gonna go see a movie in the theater. Yes, part of it is the sound and the picture, but a lot of it is the ambiance. And these places, they're dripping with ambiance. Yeah. And in fact, by the way, Kenny Cooper of WHYY did a story last year about these independent small movie theaters in the Philly area that seem to be having a revival. So I say, go for it, old theaters. I'm with you. Yeah. And I would, if they do this thing with the Anthony Wayne Theater, I think I might have to see one. Yeah. See a show.
And by the way, shout out to Ishana Night Shyamalan. She's been sort of stepping her game up. She was in her father's latest film, Trapped.
I think that was the other daughter.
The other daughter. Oh, that was the other daughter.
I think she's a director and producer.
Wow. So both of them, they're all stepping it up.
Boy, I should have fact checked this. I'm like 90% sure.
Okay.
So that the other one is the singer. Who was entrapped. And I think she is like also, but she's in the film business too.
But that's beautiful that they're the second generation.
It's a family affair.
It's
a family affair.
Keeping it local. So,
by the way, heads up for tomorrow before we get to our main segment today. The region is buzzing with Super Bowl excitement, as are we here at Studio 2. And we will be back tomorrow with a live radio special. We're not usually on Fridays, but this is a special week. We are calling this How the Eagles Bring Philly Together. We've got sports writers, a comedian, a singer, a DJ, and more special guests. It's tomorrow 1 to 3 on WHYY after the connection. So we would love if you joined us tomorrow for that big Eagles special.
And just for vibes, put on your Eagles gear and listen. But you can watch it on YouTube. It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. And right now, speaking of fun, let's transition over to our main segment today. That was jazzy.
I like that.
Today we are exploring how much technology has taken over our lives and if it's possible to limit it. How much time do you spend on your smartphone a day?
Ooh.
The average is about 4.5 hours. That's an average, which means plenty of people spend way more. Our phones are constantly beckoning us with all the social media videos and text messages and emails and shows to stream. The pull for our attention is so strong.
And that is why a lot of people are craving the before times, when tech didn't have as much control over our lives. A few years ago, the New York Times profiled a group of teens in Brooklyn who started the Luddite Club, bonding over low-tech flip phones, time spent in nature, reading paper books together, and just being together. Can you believe that? Well, the article went viral with people sharing their attempts to reduce their tech dependence. And one of the original members of the club, Biruk Watling, is now a sophomore at Temple University and is in the process of recruiting people for the Philadelphia Luddite Club chapter. And she joins us in studio to talk about the challenges of living low tech. Welcome to Studio 2, Biruk.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yes, and also with us is environmental journalist Ben Goldfarb, who had a long run with a flip phone until recently. Ben, welcome to Studio 2.
Thanks a lot. I'm here in Colorado with my iPhone. I'm so ashamed.
No.
Thanks for having me.
It's all right.
This is a shame-free zone. This is a shame-free zone.
Safe space.
We're trying to learn from each other here.
Appreciate you guys.
And to our listeners and our studio tubers, are you worried about your phone dependency? Are you trying to cut back? Could you live without your phone for a day? On YouTube, Artist Not says 48 hours tops. It's nice, though, when I take time off from my phone, peaceful even. So join the conversation, 888-477-9499, Studio 2 at WHYY.org. And if you're watching on WHYY's YouTube channel, drop your comments in the live chat.
And so, Biruk, we wanted to start with you because you're recruiting people for this chapter. So take us back. Like, how did you grow up, and what led you to say, you know what, I want to live low tech?
Yeah, so as a kid, and I just have recently come to this understanding, I was addicted to technology heavily, and especially television. And as especially through COVID, that just got worse. I feel like our parents were not prepared for the way that technology would come into our lives, and so I don't blame them for the dependency that I developed, but it is something that really was a detriment to my mental health. So that was like me growing up with technology.
What was the breaking point for you? Or where you sort of had the realization, I guess?
Yeah, okay. So the realization for me was the way that I misused technology. For me, it became a place to cultivate a new image of myself and constantly prove that self over and over again. And I realized that the self outside of technology, outside of social media, was slowly dying. Like I wasn't giving enough attention, enough kind words, and enough just of an eye to myself outside of that.
So your real life persona, like who you are, who we're seeing right now, was suffering because you spent so much time online.
Yeah.
And so you decided to do what?
So at first I deleted and downloaded social media over and over again. And I did that while I knew of the Luddite Club, and I knew of what Logan and Jameson especially were doing.
This is friends of yours in Brooklyn, by the way.
Yes, these are, Logan is, if you guys don't know, Logan founded the club with Jameson, and I was friends with them before they joined the club, and I was slowly realizing as I watched them come more into their selves and their bodies and their creativity that that's what I want to do. So it was a process of giving myself the time to delete and download and go through that mental like
it's like
journey.
a tug of war.
Yeah.
I don't think you can deny yourself that. Like that's where the lack of judgment comes in. Is if you can't, at least for me, it's not realistic to expect yourself to be done with one try.
And then you just decided to let it all go.
Yeah.
And you have a flip phone now.
Yes, I do.
And how has life changed for you?
Well, I had a flip phone for like around 2 years, and then I came to college and I had to get an iPhone again, or a smartphone. I decided to get an Android because there's something about the iPhone, the grip that iPhone has on our like just our society, and it was something that I thought was a good step towards making me feel a little more free and a little more autonomous. But when I first got a flip phone, it was an amazing experience. I attribute to that choice my my closeness with myself today. Like yeah. As your face lit up. the fact that having a flip phone could change so much about your life, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment.
So we want to get your backstory, Ben. So you're a journalist, and this whole experiment that you went through, it started serendipitously, right? Like there was no plan here. There was no like sort of, my understanding is like something happened to your phone. And then you were like, wait a second, maybe I should have just let that thing happen to my phone and not replace it. Could you give us the backstory?
That's right. Yeah. And I really admire Biruk's intentionality in transitioning to life with the flip phone, because as you say, for me, it was just sort of happenstance. You know, it was the summer of 2018. I was fishing and I took my iPhone out, and I'd had an iPhone for many years, as we all had. And I could tell that it was impinging upon my quality of life in all kinds of ways. It was making me a less present conversational partner, probably a worse husband. I think my wife would probably agree with that. Just having email in my pocket at all times made it hard to unplug from work. And so one day in 2018, I was fishing, and I dropped my iPhone in the pond that I was fishing in, and it just felt like this incredible sign from the universe telling me that I was meant to live a different way. Maybe on some subconscious level, I did it intentionally. I'm not sure. So I walked into the Verizon store the next day, and I got a flip phone, and I had a flip phone for the next 6.5 years, and it was fantastic.
So let's talk about what you liked about it, and what was challenging about those years
flip
with
phone years.
Just the flip phone years, exactly.
Yeah, the flip phone years. What a period that was in my life. Certainly the for the most part, the pros really outweighed the cons. I think that kind of understanding of oneself that Biruk was talking about, when you can be quiet in a space with your own thoughts, or maybe only a book. That's just kind of an amazing experience, right? The not having your attention fragmented and pulled in so many different directions is such a wonderful, powerful experience, right? Ezra Klein often talks about how attention is the single most important resource that we have personally and that society has as a whole. And so the ability to recapture that resource and own it and not have it tugged on by Twitter and Instagram and email was that was also fantastic. The cons, or that we live in a society increasingly that's hostile to flip phones, and over time it became impossible for me to park a car and enter a concert and, read a menu at a restaurant, right? And there were workarounds for all of those issues. But it was just becoming sort of increasingly challenging. And, I certainly don't want to say that it's impossible to live with a flip phone, because people like Biruk are doing it. And I have so much admiration for all of my fellow flippers who are out there staying strong. But, for me, it just became really challenging.
I want to read this comment from Unlit Daylight on YouTube. Unplugging from work is such a good point. I wish we had a law like in France where employers couldn't contact you outside of work hours. So that's certainly a motivation for some people, disconnecting from the workplace. You talked about menus, Ben Goldfarb, and I read some of your writing about your years as a flipper. And one thing you mentioned is that you don't end up like vetting all of your potential experiences through like social media and rating systems like Yelp. To give an example, you might just walk into a restaurant with no idea if it's good or not, and it restores some serendipity to your life. Can you talk about very good experiences that came out of that, and maybe some very bad experiences that came out of not being able to sort of like pre-check everything on the internet?
Yeah. It's funny. There are so many fundamental human experiences, I think, that smartphones have eliminated from the world, right? Like the kind of the serendipitous interactions that can come when you're, driving around an unfamiliar town, you roll your window down and ask somebody for directions, right? Yep. That was sort of intrinsic to the human experience for 100 years. And then smartphones totally eliminated that, right? So that, so the ability to just interact in a kind of a friendly, casual way with strangers and to connect with fellow humans, was just a really powerful.
I want to know if you had a great restaurant eating experience.
And by the way, Avi is a foodie, so he loves this. Yes.
Oh man, that's a good question. I wish I could think of one off the top of my head. But a million times, you're in an unfamiliar city and you stumble into some, great little hole in the wall Thai or Chinese place that you just happen to blunder across, and it ends up making your day, right? I love that kind of experience. The challenge, of course, is that being able to get to the places you're trying to get to is also pretty freaking helpful, right? And there were so many times, in driving around, on reporting trips and whatnot, that I'd be like, I'd end up calling my wife, hey, I'm at the intersection of Highway 291 and County Road 150. Where the heck am I?
Yeah.
Like an astronaut calling ground control, and she would have to direct me wherever I was going.
And she was probably using her smartphone.
I was totally dependent on her. I was just outsourcing my bad behavior to her. Exactly. And
That's
so
fascinating.
last year I read an article about for the Guardian about life with the flip phone, and one of the commenters on the essay said, "Wow, he really sounds like a huge burden to his friends and family."
And by the way, we're about to go to break, but coming up, we're going to talk about the downsides of ditching smart tech. Can you really survive without a smartphone? Plus, is this a trend, or is this going to grow into a movement? We'll talk about that as well on the other side of the break. We've got a lot of comments.
Yeah, Matthew from Belmar says, I considered going dumb phone recently and found a neat alternative called the Lite 3 phone. Ultimately decided it's a no-go. You need a smartphone app to get into any ticketed event these days, which is a deal breaker, and I have come across that particular hurdle even with my smartphone, which apparently isn't smart enough for some apps. So we'll talk about all that. Give us a call, 888-477-9499. Email studio2@whyy.org. We'll be right back.
And right back is now.
We're right back. We're right back with Pledge. We should clarify. So what do we always say, Cherry? We're putting on our
Pledge hats.
Our Pledge hats here for just a few minutes, and we'll get back to regularly scheduled programming in a moment. But it's a one-day drive, right, Cherry?
Yeah, and we're doing it. We usually do it around Valentine's Day.
Right.
You know, this is a show your love drive, but we're doing it a little bit early because, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, and we're anticipating a win, which means next week we'll be in full celebration mode. We're going to go ahead and lean into that.
Kind of stuff,
so, and so we're just popping in.
I am worried this is all a jinx, but go ahead.
No, I don't believe in jinx. So there you go. So we have a challenge today, a $15,000 conditional challenge.
Whoa.
Where we have a pair of generous WHYY donors from Win More. They want to encourage and inspire others to contribute to WHYY today. So if we can get 250 contributions today by 6:30 p.m., we unlock that $15,000, which will support the programming and news on WHYY. And so we invite you to call in now if you're a sustaining member. You can always give an additional donation.
That's true.
Or you can become a sustaining member. And if you do, we have something really nice for you.
Should I tell them about it?
Tell them about it.
Oh, yeah, this is cool. I didn't even know this existed until moments ago.
And you looked a little shocked when they showed it to you. So
it's a mug that's got our mugs on it, and all the great WHYY hosts. This is a WHYY local love reveal mug. I don't know if you know what a reveal mug is, but basically the image on it is revealed when you fill it up with like tea, hot liquid, right? And this reveals the faces of you and me and Marty and Terry and Matt and Mikan and Jennifer and Tanya.
Yeah.
So you could
we're all smiling too, so it's like,
which is rare. So it's for $10 or more per month as an ongoing sustaining member if you want the WHYY local love reveal mug. And this is to show your love one day drive. So love is in the air. And like Cherry said, you got to go whyy.org/radio or call the number at the bottom of your screen. But that's the way to get that amazing mug and support this amazing service, WHYY.
Yeah, and I have to give, a shout out to WHYY and all our supporters here for the station, because we wouldn't even have Studio 2. I mean, Studio 2 is a brand new show. We're about to celebrate our second anniversary coming up this March, and we would not be in this position. We're streaming on YouTube right now. But it's member support that allows us to continue to innovate, to make sure that we bring our programming to wherever people are. And so if you're a Studio 2 fan, which I hope you are because you are listening right now, you will go on to whyy.org/radio, make a donation today. Help us unlock this $15,000 donation.
And apparently, if you make a contribution today, Cherry, you are entered for a chance to be the winner of a package that includes 2 tickets to And Juliet at the Academy of Music, plus a $200 Visa gift card.
So you can go to dinner.
Yeah, full contest rules on the support page at whyy.org. So that's if you make a donation, you get a chance for that little extra thank you. And, of course, even if you don't win, you support a great service. You support WHYY. I want to echo everything Cherry said. The ability to shift with the times. we are kind of talking about that today on our show. It's just members make it all possible. So WHYY.org/radio.
Show your love.
Show your love, and we really do appreciate it.
I'm embarrassed you caught me on my phone. That's a rarity. Now I look like every other dope. Put down your damn phones. But you know what I mean, with the grip 2 fingers texting, and you think that looks like a skill or something. That says there's something gross about you. You could say that in 10 seconds on a phone call.
And so if I asked you right now, could you not be on your phone for 24 or 48 hours, you would say that's possible?
It'd be a challenge. I may do it for $50 or something. Steve from Philly.
Dang. Steve had some stuff to say.
Steve said you got to pay him.
Yeah, welcome back to Studio 2. I'm Avi Wolfman-Aaron.
And I'm Cherry Gregg. And you just heard from Steve, who spoke with our producer, Andreas, in Washington Square yesterday. And we're talking about how much technology is in our lives and if it's possible to live a low-tech life. Can you get by with an old-school flip phone, or dumb phones, as they're affectionately called? Or do we all need to have smartphones to get by in the modern world? We have two guests who both tried to reduce their tech dependency. And let me reintroduce them. We have Biruk Watling, a Temple University sophomore who started the Philadelphia Luddite Club. We also have Ben Goldfarb, an environmental journalist. His book, Crossings: How Road Ecology is Shaping the Future of the Planet, came out last year.
And if you're listening at home, have you tried to cut down on the tech in your life, or are you full on embracing it? Could you live without your phone for a day, a week, a month, a year? 888-477-9499 is the number to call. Studio2@WHYY.org is the email. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, drop your comments in the live chat.
Yeah, Laura emails, and these are some folks who are resisting the tech dependency.
This is a good one.
Yeah, Laura emails, I have my ringer off permanently so I can focus on my work at home and just check in on my own time. I just feel it's unfortunate that I feel like I have to make excuses to just about everyone for doing that.
You have to explain yourself a lot.
And Carol from Jersey comments, I still have a landline. I hate the idea of people being able to contact me everywhere and at any time. And so
okay, Carol.
Yeah, Carol's like, don't call me. I'll call you. So Biruk, you talked about what it was like having your flip phone and how it was like this bliss. I want you to expand on that. And then, experiencing this bliss, why would you go back to a smartphone, or were you forced in that direction?
Yeah, for sure. I would say the bliss came from an independence, a sense of independence, and a sense of more familiarness with myself. There's something about a smartphone that puts a drive between you and yourself. Mm-hmm. For me, like I said, I stopped paying attention to the physical world and things off of Instagram.
Did you start noticing new things in the physical world?
With that flip phone?
With the flip phone.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So this is something that I am so grateful to experience is, for me, I realized one day as I was walking, I was on my block 5 seconds away from home, and I said to myself, you have never looked up. Like, you don't look up. I looked down. I came to, realized I was looking down, and then realized that I forgot how the sky looked. Wow. And I looked up, and it was, I'm getting emotional because it was this feeling of, I call it like a beautiful panic, because the sky felt so familiar, and I didn't, and that was an insane experience.
Just looking at the sky.
Because you had been so just looking down at your phone so much, and then not having that technology allowed you to look up, but you had to go back to a smartphone.
Yeah, for me.
And why?
It definitely felt like not a choice, but at the same time, I approached that choice with a positive mindset of, okay, let me try something new again. Let me see if the lack of technology use in my last 2 years has benefited me, and maybe I can use my phone better now. And maybe this means that I won't be scrolling for hours and hours on end, and I can use this piece of technology as a tool rather than a way of life. So I approached it that way, and I quickly realized that there's a lot more work to be done within even my my own relationship with technology.
But did you have to do it to just be able to navigate school and live life?
Yeah. What was the reason you had to do it?
I got a flip phone because of college. I went to college.
You mean a smartphone?
Oh,
yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I got a smartphone because I got accepted to Temple University. It's a city school. There's many apps that the school requires or heavily suggests.
Yeah.
And you have to pay $50 for a physical ID. So most people just have their ID on their phone. So there's just certain things put in place that make it either really hard or nearly impossible.
Yeah.
I can't, like, the way that you call certain, like, what are they called? The way you call people to help you walk, escorts, or like just
so from
security
a safety
systems.
perspective.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to read some comments real quick. So Stephanie says, couldn't do it. I would have to text with my college students many times a day. I wouldn't be able to look up or verify facts. I'd be totally relying on NPR and my headlines of yore. So no, I prefer not to. Aaliyah from Philly says, ask your Muslim friends during Ramadan. A lot of them give up social media for Ramadan to focus on worship. And Paige says, many of my more religious Jewish friends do this every Shabbat for 24 hours. It's a no for me, but just shouting out that she knows a lot of people who do this. And then this comment on YouTube from Ferris Bueller, I guess that's Ferris Bueller without the B, says, I'm interested in Ben's experience as a journalist with a flip phone. I'm an early career journalist and feel like I can't do this job without a smartphone. So a lot of people feel like because of the nature of their work, Ben, they need it. So how did you get around it? And was your job part of the reason you ended up going back?
It absolutely was, yeah. And it's funny, as Ferris can probably attest, right? When you go on a reporting trip, you need to be able to take pictures and take notes and record interviews, and so and of course get to the place that you're going, right? So I would go on these reporting trips, and I would have a DSLR camera and a tape recorder and a GPS device. And so, so you end up actually bringing more technology with you to replace the single piece of technology that the smartphone is. And,
just real quick, Lynn Robinson Fleming on YouTube says, to the guests or anyone ditching their smartphones for low-tech alternatives, what does your use of technology outside of the phone look like? Are you on your tablet or home computer anyway? And what you're saying is, yes, you do end up needing to supplement just to fulfill like your work obligations.
Yeah, absolutely. And increasingly, what Biruk is talking about, that the fact that everything is going towards apps, it just became so hard for me to get paid, for example, because I had to fill out paperwork via an app. So certainly being a journalist with a flip phone was challenging, and absolutely professional considerations were a big part of why I reverted to an iPhone a couple months ago.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of places you go now, especially when you buy from vendors, all they take is like Apple Pay or Cash App, and if you don't have a smartphone, you got to carry cash.
But then also, what about the social side of it? Like, so a lot of people connect on social media, but even outside that, like I was in a group chat recently and I was added to one, and one of the people had to be taken off because they had a flip phone, and the way that their flip phone received group chat messages basically overwhelms the phone. So they could not be part of the group chat. And I'm like, group chats are a big way that like
people communicate. We
connect with each other. Like, how did you get around that, Biruk? Like, basically communicating with peers.
Yeah. The transition from social media made it a lot easier for me to be comfortable with the people around me on a day-to-day, if that makes sense. I see the phone now more as a way to just keep up with the people that I know, and my experience and where I go day-to-day is how I meet people. And I think that maybe for me, I I recognize that on a college campus that I don't leave often, I'm not going to meet a lot of people, a lot of new people, or have a lot of new and diverse experiences that I could have off the campus. But I think the solution...
Does that bother you at all?
Yes, it does bother me. I think the solution is to go off campus and to go other places and to expand your physical world. There's also this idea that social media brings us closer together, which is, I think there's a lot of validity to. But I also think it's a driving force or a dividing force in the way that we communicate with each other. I notice in my day-to-day life, people prefer, or people kind of reject genuinity in a way now. It's not, it feels like people don't really want to know you. They want to know the image that you put out there. Yeah.
And they want to, it's not as authentic as being able to connect face to face in person. And by the way, we want to hear from you. Could you live without your phone for a day? How about a week, forever? Why or why not? And are you worried about your dependence on technology? You can call 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. And if you are on YouTube, you can leave your questions or comments in the chat. We do have a caller on the line. We have Ed from Richboro, Pennsylvania. Ed, you're on the line. What's your question or comment?
Well, thank you for taking my call. But, I was listening to your guests, and, what I have found for myself is I would absolutely give up my phone, and I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep over it. So for me, I work in healthcare, and it's a way to communicate with my team and our customers. But it never ends. So if there's some emergency and they need to get a hold of me, they have access to me 24/7. But that also goes in the opposite direction. So for me, what I really have learned is trying to shut down at 5 o'clock and just leave the phone in the car or in a space where I just don't want to be bothered. I hate to put it that way. But what I've noticed is a lot of times you're walking around and people just look at their phones.
Yeah.
And you can.
I think we lost Ed.
Talking about.
Oh, there you are.
Hello.
Oh no, we got you back. Go right ahead.
Real quick, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so there really is something to putting the phone down and then just connecting. I think when we hear the word detach, it may have negative connotations, but if we're detaching from one thing, we're connecting to another.
Yeah, good
point.
point.
So for me, it's detaching from that virtual world and connecting with my kids and the people around me.
Yeah, equal and opposite reactions. Great point from Ed in
you.
Richboro, Pennsylvania. Thanks so much, Ed.
Yeah, and I think about this. I remember my first job, and we did not have Blackberries. And then 6 months later, we were required to carry Blackberries. And I've never been unattached from my phone since. And I think about that 6 months of freedom that I had and how beautiful it was to be able to sleep well and not have to respond to emails on the weekends. And so I think about that. So Roxanne emails, I would really be saddened if I did not have a smartphone. I use it more for taking care of my finances, such as banking. I deposit my checks with it. I can make transfers via my apps on my cell phone. I can go to the supermarket without having cash in my pocket to make purchases. And so, Ben, when I think about all the things that you use your cell phone for, your smartphone for, is there a way? Could you really, really ditch it and just exist in the world separate from your job?
Yeah, I think you certainly could. But even if you don't transition away from a smartphone altogether, I think what that last caller was talking about, just creating periods of physical separation from your phone is really important.
Boundaries,
right? Boundaries, exactly. So, I never have my phone in the bedroom, right? I go to bed, I close the door, the phone is locked out, charging in the living room, right? So it's not the last thing I'm looking at night and the first thing I look at in the morning. When I go to dinner, the phone's in the car, right? When I go hiking, ideally I don't have the phone with me, although I occasionally violate that rule. So just, creating these periods of separation from the phone, I think that's so important. Those boundaries are critical.
Let's bring in another caller now. Kate from New Jersey is on line 2 and has a story to share with us. Kate, you're on
Hello.
Studio
Yep,
2.
I'm on. Thank you. I'm much, much happier without a cell phone. I haven't had one in 6 years. I had one. It let me down in the middle of the night in a bad road. I had to hitchhike to a gas station with a broken down car, and I thought I'll never use one of these things again. I dropped it in a bucket of water, and I haven't looked back since. I also like that nobody can call me unless they call and either leave a message or connect with me on the phone. I have time to read, to play with the dogs, to call friends on the phone that I want to talk to, and I hear people's desperation with the lives they live that are ruled by that stupid thing. I don't think people know what's happening to them, because boy, did I missed it for about a day after I got rid of it, and I panicked the first time I drove somewhere without it, and boy, do I feel liberated now. So I recommend it. Goodbye.
Bye, Kate.
Thank
Kate
you,
is
Kate.
Liberated. I love that.
That was a strong statement.
That was definitely strong.
Look, and we should bring this up because Julie on YouTube mentions smartphones are definitely addictive, but the accessibility features make them a lifeline for folks with disabilities, chronic illness, even people with temporary injuries or illnesses. So, there are some real sort of hurdles that are very difficult to clear if you want to make this transition. But Ben brings up the point of it doesn't have to be binary, black and white. You can, there's all this gray area in between where you can intentionally reduce that dependence. I want to ask you, Biruk, what's interesting about your story is that you're part of this club and you're trying to get other people to join the club. And so you're talking with people your age about this topic. How do those conversations go? What do they say?
Yeah. So, one thing I'll say is the article has been really good for the club and expanding in Philadelphia. I think with a little bit more legitimacy, people are a little more open to hearing about what's happening with the club. And great news is that my professor mentioned the club in my social movements class, contemporary movements in America, something of the sort. And 4 people came up after and they were like, I'm interested. And we had our first meeting on Monday and it was amazing.
So there's an openness there.
There's definitely an openness. I think where where people start to close off is, or at least where I think people start to close off is a perceived superiority complex when it comes to somebody saying, hey, I'm doing this differently, maybe you should try it if you want to. They think it's a judgment thing. I think so in a lot of ways, and I understand that completely. For me, the one thing that I really want to emphasize, especially with the comment that you shared about the accessibility features of a smartphone, is what I'm fighting for in my life and also other people's lives is choice, the ability to, if you want to use your phone, if you want to doom scroll for the rest of your life, that's your choice. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. If you don't, you should also, though, have the choice to not rely on technology if that's what you want to do. And I think that's what has gotten confused a little bit is, for me, I have a certain relationship with technology. Somebody else will have a different one. And it's less about making everybody have the same relationship, making a homogenous culture of technology, which we have currently, and more so diversifying it.
And do you think this is going to be a movement, or do you feel like it's growing? It's something that you see people in your generation wanting? Yeah, for sure. I'll say that I have had a little bit of a imposter syndrome as to what am I doing here? Sometimes I'll just question it all, like, do I have a purpose in this movement? It's easy to, as a 19-year-old sophomore, to question if you have influence and if you want to have influence. But what I'm realizing is that there are people willing to listen and people who resonate with my experiences and who have very similar experiences or have things to share with me that I have never considered. Like my friend Jamie she's a library fanatic. And that's something that I haven't tapped into in a while since visiting the Brooklyn Public Library every Sunday. So things like that where I realize there's Luddites all over. And I'm really excited, you know?
Ben, do you have any closing thoughts for us? We just have a little under a minute about your experiences, what you take away from those years with the flip phone.
Well, I think that Baruk's point about creating a world in which there's choice is a really good point, right? I mean, I've written a lot about car culture, and I think that people don't drive everywhere because they love driving so much. It's because we live in a world with poor public transit and pedestrian and cycling options, right? And I think that smartphones, at least for me, are kind of the same thing, right? I don't necessarily want a smartphone. We just live in a world whose architecture is geared towards smartphones, like Baruk's example about Temple, charging $50 for a physical ID. So, I think that's the kind of the secret here is, can we create a world in which opportunity and choice for the flippers out there still exists, and we're not totally smartphone dependent. That's critical.
The flippers, the Luddites, whatever you call them, I really do appreciate the time that both of you shared with us today. That was Ben Goldfarb, environmental journalist and author. We also had Biruk Watling, sophomore at Temple University and founder of the Philadelphia Luddite Club. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yes, and we want to remind our viewers and listeners at home that we will be back tomorrow from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. for a Studio 2 Super Bowl special. Lots of guests, lots of laughters, and we hope to hear from you. So tune back in tomorrow at 1. Go Birds.
Studio 2 is produced by Debbie Builder, Paige Murray Bessler, Andreas Copes. Mike Schiffler is our visual producer, Al Banks, and Tina Calique engineered today's show. Our executive producer is Kevin McCory from Studio 2 at WHYY in Philly. I'm Avi Wolfman-Aaron.
And I'm Cherry Gregg. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Uh-oh. It's hat switch time. We're back with the show.
I feel like we should have like some kind of boom,
Yeah.
like a little
What's
cymbal.
a good hat song?
A little
Yeah,
cymbal
we need
clash. Boom.
a hat change song. Maybe people could we could crowdsource that.
Yes.
But anyways, yes. We're talking about supporting WHYY during this one-day pop-up pledge drive. We do this every year in February, as Cherry mentioned earlier. We typically do it right around Valentine's Day. We did not want to do that this time because there could be some parades and things happening.
Go Birds.
Next week. So we just didn't want to risk it. So we are having that pledge drive today, and there's a lot going on, but we have to pack it all into one day. Cherry, I'll give folks the place they can go to make a gift, WHYY.org/radio.
Yeah, the big challenge today, $15,000. We could unlock it if we're able to get 250 contributions by the end of the day. So that is 6:30 p.m. We got to convince 250 of our supporters to go to WHYY.org/radio or to call that number on your screen and to make a donation of any amount. Also, if you donate today, you would enter to win tickets to see Anne Juliet. That's 2 tickets plus a $200 Visa gift card, right? You could win that package deal. Full contest rules are on the support page at WHYY.org. And so you could go to the Academy of Music. You can use that $200 gift card to go to dinner. It would be a lovely evening, and you get the pleasure of knowing that you supported your favorite public media station, which is WHYY.
Do you know what Anne Juliet is? I had to look this up. I'm be honest, I'm pretty ignorant about musical theater, but it's a coming of age jukebox musical featuring the music of Swedish pop songwriter Max Martin, and it explores the story of what if Juliet does not die at the end of Romeo and Juliet. So that is the premise.
I wonder would they stay together.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he lives. I don't know the play. But so anyways,
many questions.
So many questions, and you could discover the answers to them with 2 free tickets to Anne Juliet. And like Cherry said, full contest rules on the support page at WHYY.org. But all of this is premised around supporting your local public media station at a critical time.
Yes.
So if you want to become an ongoing sustaining member, you can do that. If you're already a sustaining member, you want to make an extra gift, you can do that. All of those gifts of any amount do count toward the big challenge today, that $15,000 conditional challenge. We need 250 contributions by 6:30. And it's a pair of generous WHYY donors from Winmore who are putting the money on the line. So go to WHYY.org/radio.
And by the way, if you become a sustainer and you make a $10 a month or more donation, you could get a really cool mug. It's called the Local Love Reveal mug. And on the
Kinda
mug,
rhymes, Local Love
yeah,
Reveal mug.
and what you get to see is the mugs, and I like that you said this earlier, the mugs of all the hosts on WHYY radio, and that includes Avi Wolfman-Arndt here. I'd be on there, Marty Moss-Coane, Terry Gross. You see Terry smiling there. You had Matt
I apologize
Gillum
for my presence
smiling.
on this, just bringing the attractiveness level down so
Mike and
significantly.
Scott on there smiling. Tanya Mosley. We see Jennifer Lynn. Everybody's smiling, and it will be revealed when you put your hot cocoa, your tea, your coffee in there, and that's what the reveal mug is for a $10 or more per month donation to your favorite public media station, WHYY.
Boy, that voice.
I love bringing out the voice.
The voice. When she does the voice, you have to give.
You
the
have
voice,
to.
The voice is special. The voice only comes out here and there. Maybe once a month you get to hear the voice. So
Yes.
the very special opportunity there. We would love if you gave. If you don't know what sustaining membership is, it basically means that you pledge to give a certain amount every single month. And by doing that, you help us plan for the future, help us invest in things like streaming our shows on YouTube.
Yes, like Studio 2, which is a
developing new shows.
Yeah, a new show.
Exactly. So WHYY.org/radio is where you go to give, and we really would appreciate it.
Yeah, and by the way, there are perks to membership. We have all sorts of events you get invited to. Also, a WHYY Passport is a member benefit. It gives you our members access to an extended on-demand library of great public television programming, thousands of hours. So
there you go.
Go online, WHYY.org/radio. Donate today. And thank you so much.
This is WHYY FM Philadelphia, WNJM Manahawkin, WNJN FM Atlantic City, WNJZ Cape May Courthouse. Streaming on the WHYY